So if you hire a 27 or 28-year-old digital marketing specialist, great idea. They grew up with the technology, but they're your head of marketing. Bad decision. Just to illustrate their financials, you needed 96 separate spreadsheets. Even for $10 million, he couldn't let go.
With me today, I have David Boim. He's the president of DSB Management Consulting, and he's here to talk to us about raising your company valuation. Now, David knows a little bit about this. He has done it 17 times, started a company, raised it, valuation, and exited. So I think he has a lot of experience and a lot of information that we probably don't know that he can share with us today. David, how are you feeling?
I'm doing fine, Zivko. How could I help you today?
Well, let's start with how do you actually raise a company's valuation?
Well, it's really interesting. People who are looking to exit their company, and it doesn't have to be right away. I want to do this in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. Longer than that is way too long because there's so much change that happens in the marketplace and with technology. But the key to this is obviously, how do I scale my company? How do I reduce my cost of operations as a percentage of revenue as the company scales? And what's really hard for many entrepreneurs is, folks, it's not about you. And when people buy your company, they understand they're going to give you a bunch of money. Sometimes there's an earnout, but the quality of your leadership team, the processes that you have in place, how much of your revenue is recurring or under contract, these are all really important factors when companies come and do evaluation. Oh, by the way, are your books in order? Are your financials in order? We just recently talked to a $32 million tire company up in the Northwest, and we looked at their books, and they're a mess. Their financials are a mess, and they want to sell their company. They have tried to do so unsuccessfully for several years, and one of the problems is, just to illustrate their financials, you needed 96 separate spreadsheets. No one's going to spend any time doing that. So if you can't get your financials in order, if your financials do not tell your story, that's the first thing people will look at after they give you a letter of intent.
So you're saying the financials tell your story.
That's correct.
What are the stories?
The financials should tell your story.
The financials should tell our story. Now, what is the story of success that we want to tell to a potential buyer? And what is the story that if you present that one, today is the day you understand and change your trajectory?
Well, what does my year-over-year growth look like? That's important. How many customers do we have? Do you have a customer that is representing 50% of your revenue? Because if you do, it devalues your company. So we take a look at that. We take a look at what are your accounts receivables? What are your accounts payables? I went into we had a company that covered the West Coast, Alaska, and Hawaii. And they were valuing their inventory. It was a distribution company. Well, when we actually did the due diligence, some of their inventory was so old that their inventory was actually worth 10 cents on a dollar. The longer it was there, the worse it was. So those are all important. Do you have things like, do you have a 13-week forward-looking cash position report? So that as you're running your company, you understand not what your cash has been in the past, but you project what your cash is going to be for the next quarter, for the next 13 weeks. Do you have that? So those are the kinds of things that we talk about when we're looking at the financial aspect of a company. But again, they help tell your story, but the story itself is what a potential investor or buyer is looking. That's what they want to see.
Um, I'm happy to see that we're starting with really interesting facts, because I think a lot of people don't understand these things. They kind of just see someone mention on YouTube, "I exited the company, I raised this." They just don't understand the process, what goes behind the years that go behind the scenes to make that moment happen. Now, you've done this 17 times. What has changed from the first time you did it to the most recent one that you did it?
Well,
Changed?
obviously, the number one thing is technology has changed.
Okay.
I did my first company in 1984, and I went through 2017, semi-retired then. I have my company, and I have a whole bunch of folks that do the heavy lifting now. So how companies are running, even today, and you look at AI and what is your AI strategy. You could be a manufacturing company, but do you have an AI strategy? Do you know how to utilize AI to make you more effective? Well, 3 or 4 years ago, that wasn't a factor because it really didn't, it didn't really exist in the business world. So technology has been a big change. We are, the world has gotten smaller. We're in an international economy. So a lot of companies, their competition is here in the United States. Some of them are even more regional. But there are players that come in. And I will give you an example. At a company in California that was provide equipment for the automobile repair business. And the manufacturer was out of France. So they had a territory that was protected. So so that's an important factor. Like, if you look at today, if the new tariffs of 30% really goes through in the beginning of August on EU, does that mean those products then will be 30% more? And how does that impact the competition here in the United States? So you have a lot of factors. We have not used tariffs in this way since the 1920s. Oh, by the way, that didn't work out. It helped hasten the depression and make the depression even deeper, and it took it worldwide. So yeah, if you're really a business person, tariffs, not a good thing. I know that sounds political. It's not. It's straight economics. But this was an interesting company. It was a small company. It was $5 million. They had $2 million of EBITDA, which is I don't mean gross profit. I mean EBITDA. That was their net profit. So you'd say, oh my gosh, 3 or 4 times EBITDA, the company's going to be worth $8 million, $10 million. It was not saleable. So you're supposed to say, why wasn't it saleable?
Why wasn't it saleable? No, because we went from so many millions to not saleable. Yeah. Why wasn't it saleable?
Because the owner was the company. Right. Double E engineer, 2 degrees, by the way. Really, really, really smart guy. Good business guy. So one of the reasons his profit was so high, he didn't have a lot of employees because he took on so much. But if a company was going to buy him and give him, and he was late 50s, early 60s, and give him a whole bunch of money, they knew he wasn't going to be around. And he had all the relationships. And he was the brains behind this. And they didn't really have a good warehousing system. So what happened was people would take a cursory look and say, oh my God, this guy's a single point of failure in his company. And he actually brought us in. We built a business plan for him and a call for him to expand his company, including hiring a chief operating officer who could fill his shoes when he left. And he loved it, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't execute it. He just could not let go. And so his company never sold. And by the way, we didn't represent him either. And we couldn't help him. Right? We were going to help him with his financials, and we were going to help him with his operations, and we were going to help him with his marketing and help scale his company. And the idea is we could scale his company to 10 or 12 million in 2 to 3 years. So 5 million to 10 or 12 million.
Right.
And then he would be able to sell his company for about 10 to 12 million dollars. So it would be about 4 times EBITDA. Even for $10 million, he couldn't let go.
He couldn't let go for $10 million.
Most
people will take it. Most people will take it.
No, they think that intellectually, of course, yes, but emotionally, couldn't do it. And and there's different types of valuations. So, like when we do software companies that are SaaS, well, that is a story of butts and seats. So their EBITDA is less important. The recurring revenue is everything. And so you can get sometimes 3, 4, 5 times the 3 or 4, 5 times revenue as your sell price. So it depends on what business that you're in. I'm going to share a quick story because I mentioned leadership and how important it is. And there was a person, we'll say in the Southeast, he and his brother had this company, 12, 13 years old, $7 million, almost all of it recurring revenue, SaaS company. And we met, and I still remember we met on the water, it was in Florida. And we met at a restaurant there, and we're talking, and he came to the conclusion and said, David, I don't know how to scale my company from here. And the people who work for me know less than I do, so they don't know how to do that. So we came up with a strategy, and he said, let's go get people who've done it before and put them in your key positions, people from 50 and $100 million software companies. And I said, you have a choice. You could pay them and give them some equity, or you could pay them a lot of money and maybe give them an equity award, which is not the same as equity. And he chose the second. And we went out and helped him put this together. And he brought in a new development officer. He brought in a new chief revenue officer. He knew a new chief operating officer, a new chief financial officer. And he gave his people that were in those positions the opportunity to stay and report to those people and learn from those people, or they could leave. And most of them stayed. Well, his company went 13 years to 7 million. In the next 3 years, he went from 7 million to 50 million. I want to repeat that. 13 years to get to 7 million, 3 years to get to 50 million.
That's 7 times higher.
Right? Sold the company for 500 million in cash. 10 times revenue.
10 times the revenue.
10 times revenue. Now, not everybody has that same story.
Yeah.
But it shows you the importance of your leadership team. And what this guy got was, I'm hiring these people. I'm going to pay them a bunch of money. And I'm going to delegate those people. I'm going to let them run. I am not going to get in their way. I am not going to approve every expenditure. I'm not going to approve each one of their strategies. We're going to agree on a business plan. They have their component. They go out and execute. I manage that. Really, really difficult for people. Great example that is public, so I could is Chris Kloss, who started ISS when he was 19 years old. It's really smart guy, built the technology and understood at 19, I don't know how to run a company. And by the way, you find a lot of software companies, they're founded by somebody who invented the software. That doesn't make them a good business person. So he hired a really good business person. I think it was out of Arthur Andersen. And By the time he was 33, he sold ISS to IBM for 1.4 billion. And Chris is, I think he's in his early 50s now, and he's still really, smart guy. I think he runs a incubator at Georgia Tech. So you get the big side, you get the little side, but business is business, and all these things are related. Right? How do I scale my company? How do I grow revenue? Give you another quick story. I went into, I had a venture capital company had invested in a software company in Utah, and it was not doing well. So they brought me in to turn around the company, and that was my modus operandi. I went in mostly working with venture capital and equity investors who invested in a company or bought a company that was not performing. So I came in, recognized the technology was old. The first thing I did was I got rid of their entire development team, hired a new development team, better developers. They had 9 developers. I hired 6, but I paid those 6 the same amount of money as I was paying the 9. So it wasn't, I was looking to cut costs. And we rewrote 900,000 lines of code in 4 months. But what was really neat is the venture capital people wanted, this was a small company, like $1.5 million, and they wanted to be a $10 million company in 2 years. Well, how are you going to do that with your existing salespeople? Right? If the average salesperson, let's say, did $800,000, I would need 12 salespeople. I'd have to hire, recruit, and manage 12 salespeople in that 2 years, and no one was going to leave. Everybody was going to make it, which is, fantasy island. So what did we do? We created a channel. We identified accounting firms that specialized in construction companies, because it was a construction and estimating software. And I turned my 2 or 3 salespeople into recruiters who supported the channel. And we recruited 150 channel partners in a year. And it was the 80-20 rule. 30 of them were producing. Well, we went from about a little less than 2 million to 5 million the first year, and 15 million the second year, and sold the company for our $25 or $30 million.
Oh.
So, okay, thinking out of the box. How do I sell? And, too many people think, I'm just going to hire more salespeople. It's hard. Hiring people, recruiting them, managing them, training them, evaluating them, that's hard. Now, it's hard to recruit channel partners and get them involved as well. But we're talking about scaling. So that was a way that no one had considered. Hey, I'm not going to hire 12 salespeople. I'm going to go out and recruit a channel. Or you hybrid it. But the key was we did all the marketing. So marketing drove interest, and geographically the interest went to these accounting firms that were now our channel partners. They brought us in. We demoed the software. We pretty much sold it. Channel partners got 15 or 20%. Great. What else would you like to know?
Very to the point. Okay. As you were talking, I was making some notes, and I do have a couple of things I want to touch base a little bit going back. Now, when you said, when you were talking about the single point of failure in the company, there are the owner is usually, if you mentioned, if you have a massive client is like 50% of your revenue, if the owner holds all the contracts or is the one that is building all these relationships, and the relationships are around the owner, that's also a single point of failure. But let's say if someone understands they want to hire the right people, and someone told me, if you're a CEO, it's just a matter of time until you become head of HR, because you're just hiring, managing, recruiting, developing people. How does someone identify the right leadership to scale his company?
Well, that's a great question. So let's start back a little bit and understand this. If you're going to hire good people, so before you say identify, how do you find them, which is your question, philosophically, you have to understand if you have to approve every decision, if you have to approve every expenditure, then what happens is good people are not going to stay. You because they will never reach their potential, and they'll know the company will never reach the potential as long as that happens. So the entrepreneur or the owner, the president, CEO, he or she needs to intellectually and emotionally understand I have to delegate to these people. So what they want to do is they want to look for experience, but be careful because marginal performance, if someone's marginal in their job, but they have all the experience, they're not going to be not marginal at the next job. Okay. And I remember hiring a VP of customer service at one of my client sites, and the HR person, she was bringing these guys in, and I'm looking at their resumes, and I go, this is, you could go out and interview these people, but if they're marginal someplace else, what makes you think they're not going to be marginal here? What is the magic pixie dust that we have? And that makes us different and better, okay? Because I want to know what it is. So you need to look for people who've been successful in the roles and maybe take a little less experience and see people who are dynamic, see people who really know their stuff, right? And then you could train them to be better leaders. So this is really important. How do you train your leaders to resolve conflict, for instance, your leadership team, to resolve conflict internally without your involvement? Can they do that? Or can you train them to do that? Because all of a sudden, it's like Godfather 3. Every time I try to get out, they drag me back in, right?
Yeah.
Right? How do you get your people to hold each other accountable in a positive way? Another thing is, if you have someone who is not a team player and not collaborative, but they're very good at their job, they got to go. Right? Because one of my slogans is never let anyone, no matter how valuable, devalue the work of other people in your organization. Right? Are they capable of multiplying themselves? And I love when I talk to an entrepreneur, well, they'll never be as good as me. Yeah, all right. So they're 80% as good as you. But if I hire 10 people who are 80% as good as you, I've just multiplied you by 8. And by the way, we can't multiply you. You're 1. You can't multiply you there. So you're looking for smart, collaborative people who have expertise and experience, not necessarily 20 years of experience. Though if you find someone with 20 years of experience and they're dynamic and they're good leaders and they train their people, that is a godsend. Grab them. The other thing is, think about your investment. Well, I want a VP of sales and marketing and I don't want to spend more than $80,000. Then hire a fractional person, because you're not going to get anybody worth a shit who is going to be your VP of sales and marketing for 80 grand. All right? Pay what you have to pay. You know what the neat thing is? When you pay for someone who's really good, if they don't come out of the box swinging, they don't come out of the box performing, get rid of them. All right? You're never 100% sure. In fact, people ask me what my batting average is. I said, if I'm 50%, I'm happy, which means that at least 50% of the people I hire are not going to be with the company in 6 months. And that's another thing is, Don't keep people thinking, well, maybe they'll work out. Right? They're not. If you right, and make sure you have good measurements in place. Right? This is not gut feeling. Make sure you like in hiring salespeople. It's not how many sales they're getting right away. How many appointments are they getting? So if I know that someone needs to be at 5 meetings a week, and I have someone who starts off, they land a big sale in their first month, but they're only getting 2 meetings a week, they got lucky. And I know long term, they're not going to make it. I'm not going to keep them for 6 months or a year, waiting to see if they're going to work harder. If you don't work hard when you first start, you're never going to work harder. Oh, those are the things that you're looking for. Make sure that you're very analytical. I have some great tools. And it's interesting when most people come for a job interview, the interviewer spends 80% of the time talking about their company. Don't do that. Spend 80% of the time talking about them. And don't go over their resume. I see you worked here. Tell me about that. No, you should be asking concrete questions. An example was doing research on a client or potential client is really important in this job. Give me 2 examples where you did that at a previous job. Tell me about that. And I had a scoring system, and I had like 8 categories and 3 or 4 questions under each category. And if I had 3 or 4 people, let's say we had an A, B, and C question, someone would do all the A questions, someone would do all the B questions, someone would do all the C questions. When they interviewed them, we score them, right? And how they answered that question, we would take notes and compare. So we were very analytical, not like, I think they're going to work out great. I really liked them. What does that mean? All right. We're hiring people in likability. Give me a break. So this is how you hire not just leaders in your organization, everybody in your organization. And I've had people leave my interview saying, that was the toughest and fairest interview I've ever been through. Because it really made them think on their feet. And that's what I want. I want critical thinkers in my organization. I don't want people that regurgitate. The other thing is, do you have orientation for training? If training means you're testing. So if you're quote unquote testing, training your people, if you don't have a test of some sort to see what they learned, you're doing orientation. If your thing is they spend 1 day in the company learning about the company, and then they go, hey, I want you to go out with Zivko and see what he does, and then you do it. That is not training. Okay? That may be a component of the training, but it's not training. So to answer your question, all these things should be a process within your organization, no matter who you're hiring.
I was smiling and laughing at some moments because I learned the mistakes, and I was happy to hear that this is the path going forward. I do the 50% rule where for every position I hired 2 people because I wasn't great at batting. So I was like, okay, I will hire 2 people at the same time. And by the end of a month or something, it was very clear which one is going to work out. And in the past, I made a mistake thinking they will get better. But it actually, as I was doing it, it was always clear. Within weeks, it just kind of falls over. And the other one, like you said, comes out of the box swinging, never an issue.
And sometimes you're 0 for 2, sometimes you're 1 for 1, and sometimes you're 2 for 2. And that's okay. I hired a new department for a company after I got through doing turnarounds. And because I'm OTD, I'm older than dirt. So when I started, when I didn't want to travel, I was traveling every week. And I was doing 2 or 3 companies at a time across the United States. And as I got older, I said, I don't want to do that. So I was helping companies with projects, and it's important to understand what you're talking about. So I was building a department, and I hired 3 people. It was a brand new department of inside salespeople, and the first 3 people, none of them made it. And people go, "Oh my God!" And the CEO's going, "Yes," because within a few weeks, I said, "No." Well, we ended up with 11 people in this department, and it actually drove down the cost of sales. They had 32 outside salespeople, so we went in and we ended up with 11 inside and 18 outside. So our cost of sales was actually lower. Company went from 80 to 120 million in 3 years. No, the other side of the coin was marketing. So let's spend a minute on that. If you don't believe in marketing, see ya. Okay? You can't do it selling your way out. You can't do it costing your way out. You know, I have people that build software and they think, oh, it's the field of dreams. You will build it, they will come. Except nobody knows who you are. So marketing is everything. And a lot of people today are taking the easy way out and they're just doing social media. Social media, it's like sitting down and playing poker. It's the ante. All right? So it's great for branding. And if you're doing business to consumer and you're driving people to your website, that's pretty good. But if you're business to business, it's truly branding. So you have to have lots of outreach. What are the vehicles that you have? Oh, I send out a newsletter. Yeah, but how many people are really reading that newsletter, right? I'm posting on LinkedIn. I'm posting here. You know, I'm paying Google per click. But when you pay Google per click, you don't know who's clicking. So how do you go after them? So you need great outreach. I'm going to a show. Okay, what's your show strategy? How many appointments do you have before you go to the show? Or you're just going to show up? I talked to one guy who was looking for help that we turned down in a software company. And I asked him how much he was spending on marketing. It was a small company. So he spent $300,000, which I thought was a lot of money, you know, good amount of money for marketing. But he spent $200,000 going to a show. $200,000. I said, what was your return? Nothing. He's doing social media, hired someone who's relatively expensive, spent $70,000 doing social media for 6 months. And then he was wondering why his company's not growing. I said, if you had given my group a budget of $300,000, your company would be double in size today. So, one, are you spending enough money? If you're listening to this podcast, go to ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Claude or any of these AI tools. Say, hey, this is my size of my company. I want to go to this size. Here's my competitors. How much money should I be spending on marketing a year? Just go do that. And I would bet dollars to donuts. See, that's an old expression. I would bet dollars to donuts that you're spending 10% or 20% of what you should be spending on marketing. And you need to invest. And it's not just like this other guy who was spending money, but he didn't know how. So if you hire a 27 or 28-year-old digital marketing specialist, great idea. They grew up with the technology, but they're your head of marketing. Bad decision. Right? It's just a bad decision. They may be headed your digital marketing. It's your bad decision. And by the way, we find single point of failures there. There's a software company with which I'm familiar, and their head of marketing has to approve everything. And they're a decent sized company, like $60 to $80 million company. And she has to approve everything. So everything is at a snail's pace. Single point of failure. It doesn't have to be the CEO. Right? It's like, I'm controlling marketing. A good leader delegates. A good leader understands I've got to multiply myself, right? We have to be fast. We have to make decisions. We need a flat organization that's responsive and embraces change. You want to sell your company? Do you have a flat organization? In other words, decisions are made on multiple levels in your company and you're good with it? You're responsive, not only to your clients, but to your internal requests, and you're built for speed. Great part of the formula. You want to grow your company? That's how you grow your company. All right. Now, and the other thing is, there's a dearth of intellectual knowledge. You don't have to hire full-time people. Hire some fractional people. Hire a fractional person to come and train your leaders. You don't need a full-time person doing that, unless you're a huge organization. Maybe you don't need you may have someone who has the title CFO. Have they bought and sold companies before? Because if they haven't, they're not a real CFO. So you may have a controller or a bookkeeper, and you can give them every title you want. Hire someone who's really strategic to do your financial planning. This is how you scale your company. Sales and marketing, you got somebody who's managing your salespeople, great. Are they thinking out of the box? They may be the right person for that job. Go hire someone. Go hire a fractional person to help you. That's something that's really cool in today's society. And
I was going to ask something around that point, because I think with time, things have changed and people are more open-minded to fractional, to coaching, to collaborations, to mentorship. These things are more and more acceptable and popular, and people talk about it like more openly. Where when I started my employment journey, let's say, not a single owner was like, I have a mentor and I talk with them. It's usually like and they're the smartest person on planet Earth. They got the company to here. Have you? No, shut up, don't talk to me. That was kind of the attitude for many, many years. At least that was my experience when I was an employee. How do you break a belief of a CEO that you need me, like David, you need a fractional, you need to kind of allow...
The answer to your question, it has to be like that guy who came to me and said, I realized I've scaled my company as far as I can go. I was talking to this company, software, B2C, business to consumer. And it was interesting, and it was December of 2023. And I upset them, these two owners, when I said, what do we know for sure? And they got real quiet. And finally, one of them says, well, what do you mean? If you could do it, you already would have done it.
Yeah.
Okay. That was our last conversation. They was insulted. And hey, I'm old, so I don't give a shit. 13 months later, the CEO calls me. They were sure they were going to go from 3 million to 8 million that year. They had been at 3 million for 3 consecutive years, and they had the plan to get to 8 million. So they went through all of 2024. So now we're in this year. And I get a call late January. He goes, David, you know what we know for sure? I said, what's that? His name was Ralph. I said, what's that, Ralph? He goes, if we knew what to do, we would have done it. We just finished the year. We finished at 3 million again, but our expenses were higher and we're losing money. Quelle surprise. Now, I will tell you, and for your audience, I do 30 to 35 one-on-ones with entrepreneur owners every single week. And I do it for free. And I do that to give back to the community. So if people want to reach out and say, hey, can I talk to you? Sure. Now, some of these people say, hey, I want to sell my company. I need help. Well, I'll have my people come in and help them execute, and they pay. My people are not free. They're in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and that's great. They're not free. But that's not a prerequisite. So, most of the people I have are young entrepreneurs. Some of them are solopreneurs. Some of them have a new idea. I just had a call this morning with someone who said, hey, I met this woman who has this great business idea, and I told her about you. Can she connect with you? I said, sure. Sure. And I have one rule. If I care more about the success of your business than you do, I do not work with you. Now, you might say, how is that possible? Well, remember I said 50%? Over the last 3 or 4 years, 50% of the people I started working with, I stopped working with. I have some people that I've been working with for 3 or 4 years, and some for 3 or 4 months. And the people I've been working with for 3 or 4 years are just killing it. Just killing it.
Okay. Now, to add to the last point you were making about the guys that wanted to go from 3 to 8, to me, it felt like they didn't understand how to value their company as well, because they were missing these targets dramatically. They were shooting for 8, they were doing 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So how does someone truly value their company?
Well, most people are not capable of evaluating their company. So let's start there. And by the way, for those of you who are in the audience here, no one cares about the years you've toiled, your blood, sweat, the sacrifices you've made. No one cares. And no one cares that, hey, I know it's $5 million now, but I know it could be a $10 million company. Well, that's why they're buying you.
Yeah.
You're a $5 million company, and they believe they could take it to 10. They're not going to give you a price for it at 10 million when you're at 5 million. So, and by the way, you can use AI to help you. I ran a workshop on June 18th. I had 29 companies on that workshop. All I did was ask questions, and they were typing them into AI, which helped them evaluate their company and then actually help them put a business. One guy said, I have 45 pages. I use DeepSeek and then Claude. I have a 45-page business plan from this, but it's still AI. Right? It's not there yet, right? It's a great start, right? It's a great start. So you really need someone to understand valuation. So if you're interested, you're better off paying for someone to come and evaluate your company. Again, make sure they're people they're not going to tell you what you want to hear, so they represent you. Hey, I think you can get 20 million, and it's really worth 8. All right, the people I told you about in the story about they thought they'd go from 3 to 8 million. They thought their company was worth $8 to $10 million. It was worth 1.5.
Okay.
All right. How do I know it was worth 1.5? Because they wanted to sell their company because they couldn't get along, and it was like 1.5, 1.7 million. But if it's 1.7 million, people are going to find stuff, right? And they didn't want to sell it for that. They wanted walk away money, right? So I need to scale my company to get where I want to go, so that I can get the money I want for either financial security for my family. I want to build wealth. I've had people who've built and sold a company before, and then they're struggling with their second company because, 1, things have changed. 2, they might have been a little lucky up front. So luck is good. Luck is good. But people are getting, in due diligence, they're getting better and better and better. And by the way, AI is one of the reasons they're getting better, because they use AI to help them do their due diligence. It's not just, people make mistakes, but now you have some systems and processes in place to do that as well. No. So, case in point, taking SaaS companies out, manufacturing companies, professional services companies, distribution companies, and business to business tend to be 3 to 4 times EBITDA, but make sure the EBITDA is right. All right. Sometimes you're adding back because as the owner, you're taking some types of compensation that if your replacement would not be taking. All right. So that maybe add value to your company. We had a manufacturing company that was about 60 million. They were at 3% EBITDA, 1.8 million. The cost of manufacturing was about 60%, so about 36 million. We came in and we reduced the cost of manufacturing and operations by 4%. So 4% of 36 million is 1.4 million. So the company went from 1.8 million to 1.4 million, which is 3.2 million, sold for 4 times EBITDA, which was about $13 million. So by doing this, the company went from a valuation of 7.2 to 13 million in a year. And they spent $200,000 to get there. Would you spend $200,000 to make another 5 or 6 million? Absolutely. All right. And this is smart. This is being smart. And by the way, people go, well, why can't they do it myself? What do we know for sure?
Could have done it. You would have done it by now.
All right. Your operations people were deliberately increasing your cost of operations? That's what they were doing? If they were capable of reducing your cost of operations by 4%, they would do it.
Sure.
All right. We have a slogan. You can't read the label from inside the jar.
And what does that
mean?
So
when you're inside the jar, you can't read the label. You have to be outside the jar. And this is why you need to get outside perspectives. And that, by the way, you talked about changes, huge change in our society, where owners, CEOs, and equity investors, venture capitalists are bringing in experts from outside to look at businesses to give a different perspective that the owner, because you know what you know.
Right.
All right. And when you say you don't know what you don't know, how do you identify what you don't know? All right. Hey, all I have to do is figure out what I don't know. Well, what do we know for sure? You know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. All right. And hey, how did I get here? It's 40 years. It's 40 years of doing this. So I've seen a bit, and I embrace tools. I spoke at the Mountain Winery outside of Silicon Valley last year for a bunch of CEOs from Silicon Valley who, I swear to God, they were between 25 and 40. And at one point someone says, "Sir," and I knew what was coming. "How old are you?" And I told them. And they go, "How do you know this?" Because you don't stop learning. So you were recently on one of my group calls on AI.
Yeah.
And we had, 45 folks on there?
Yeah, 40, 50 people, yeah.
And we didn't have a speaker, and we didn't have a PowerPoint. It was people sharing the tools and how they were using AI. It was a cathartic group session. Now I had some people in there, like you mentioned, Leary, and Dan was another one. They're specialists. They're way ahead of the curve. They're on the cutting edge. So and sometimes they were hard to follow, right? I mean, that was an intellectual taxing argument. And my next group meeting is on marketing, everything marketing. We're going to share, what are people doing for marketing? Hey, by the way, someone may say something they're doing that you're not. Oh my gosh, I'm going to find something out that I don't know. And I'm going to get it from an outside person. Cool. All right. And Zivko, how much did it cost you to be on that call?
It was free.
It was free.
Yeah, it was free. It was fantastic. I encourage people, if we can put a link or something, to join those, because it was informative. There was a lot of perspective. People did share exactly their 888 flow. They would share exactly how they've done something. There was one gentleman, the one that said about the 45 pages, he explained the prompt. Like, this is how the prompt. There was not a gentleman that was doing prompts, and he was explaining how to properly do the prompts.
He was an old guy like me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, for your audience, if you go to meetup.com and you go to the Kansas City Business Strategy Group, you can sign up. It's free and join our meetings, which is cool. And even though it says Kansas City Business Strategy Group, it's actually international. And we have almost, I think, 1,450 members, mostly across the United States, but even in Asia and Europe. So welcome to come on board.
I would highly recommend. I loved it. It was fantastic. It was very like this conversation. It was raw. No one was pitching. They were just like sharing. No one was pitching. It was like, this is what we do. Someone would tag to the last thing. Someone mentioned like, hey, this is what. There was one gentleman, he was saying about the hiring process they were doing, and there was another one that said, hey, I do have an AI tool that speeds up going through all these resumes and hiring. So it was fascinating to see.
Yeah, a guy talked about how he was using AI. He got 900 responses to some of his ads to hire some technical people, and he used AI to sort through resumes. But more importantly, he ran 3 sessions, Monday, Wednesday, Monday, where people could log on and he would talk about his company, and he used that as a qualifier. If they weren't interested enough to come in and learn about his company in a 15-minute Zoom call, screw it.
Yeah.
And he ended up with 45 or 50 good people, and he hired 2 people. In fact, he had his onboarding last week, but he explained how he used, what his process was. Very cool. I never thought, by the way, I learned something there. I never even thought of that. Right? But I'll steal it now.
It was good. It was shared, and that was the purpose of it. Now, we're close to the end of the podcast, but I do want to thank you for the time that you spend and sharing all these insightful things with us. If people want to work with you or talk with you, how did they do that? How did they get a hold of you?
Well, first of all, feel free just to email me. It's dboim, and Boim is BOIM at dsbconsult.com. You can go to, even easier, to my website, which is dsbexitstrategy.com, and there's a button that says let's talk, and my schedule comes up, and you'll see what it is, what's open. I play golf 4 times a week, so that takes up some of my time, and then I do my one-on-ones. That's my life. Life has been great.
Amazing.
Not bad for a kid who grew up in a tenement on the west side of Chicago.
It's the journey, like you said. It's the journey.
It's the journey.
The journey to get to this.
And I'm just giving back, folks.
I appreciate that, David. Thank you so much for giving back. Thank you so much for sharing all these things. It was raw. It was authentic. It was definitely something that it's impactful, and I hope people take away a lot of stuff and start using them, implement them as fast as possible, because it does work. It is real. Take it for someone like David, who did it 17 times. So David, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate all of this and wish you all the best.
Take care.